Could TikToks and Instagram Reels affect the political ideology of an entire demographic? A recent Gallup poll proves the politics of these digital natives are becoming increasingly polarized among men and women of the generation. While Gen Z is not the only age group to get lost in echo chambers of thought on the internet, it seems to have a salient effect on their politics. Today, we'll be talking to Dr. Ronnie Schreiber from San Diego State University to discuss the gender gap and its effects on the social lives of Gen Z.
It doesn't seem implausible to me that the gender gap could be widening, particularly among the groups that they articulated in that Gallup poll, the younger women and then women over the age of 65. The reasoning, I believe, is because there have been significant attacks on rights, women's rights that affect young women very significantly. Reproductive rights being the main one, which I think a lot of young women took for granted that that was just a given, that they would have easy access and legal access to abortion. And as we know, that is no longer the case in many places.
The poll showed that Gen Z women are overwhelmingly identifying as liberal as opposed to their male counterparts, and part of this can be attributed to Gen Z's status as one of the most diverse generations.
In early gender gap studies, one of the main reasons there was a gender gap is because Black women were far more liberal than men. And so the gender gap increased among women of color, particularly Black women. And so I can imagine that too would be an issue, particularly given the excessive racist rhetoric that has come out of the Trump administration. And since then, that hasn't been muted.
The toxic masculinity that thrives in some corners of the internet has made social media hostile for women. Gen Z men are actually less likely to identify as feminists than millennial men, and the popularity of influencers like Andrew Tate signified their refusal of feminist or left-wing politics. For some Gen Z men, the internet's echo chambers of affirmation was the pipeline from moderate to extremist.
We look to sources that affirm our existing opinions or values, right? And that's always been the case, except now there's so much more of it to be able to do that. And so it's much easier for people to just have their views affirmed, to speak in vacuums where no one is challenging them, to get information that is fully inaccurate but never challenged, right? I mean, as we know, that's a huge problem. There then becomes a community that folks who already slightly feel that way or feel alienated can kind of resonate with, right? Those kind of sources in the media of toxic masculinity are not new, but I think the form and the saturation of it is probably what has created. Yeah, that makes total sense actually. And then it's affirmed, like obviously the kind of political dynamics around the kind of right-wing version of the Republican Party are just reaffirming that.